The year is 1946. A baby girl is born into the world. She's one of 12 kids in a family so poor that people say her parents paid the doctor, who delivered her with just a bag of cornmeal. That little girl was Dolly. Rebecca Parton, a name that would won. They shine on billboards, theaters, movie screens, and concert stages all around the world. Jump ahead many years, and Dolly Parton isn't just a country music star. She's a legend. She's sold more than 100 million records around the world, won 11 Grammy Awards out of almost 50 times being nominated, turned Dollywood into one of America's favorite theme parks, and even started a reading charity called the Imagination Library that has given out over 200 million free books to kids. But behind the wigs, sparkly clothes, and funny jokes, Dolly has been living a double life. For 30 years, she built a sparkling public image that everyone thought they knew, while carefully keeping another quieter side hidden from the spotlight. That difference, that push and pull between Dolly the star and Dolly the regular person, is what makes her story so interesting. This isn't about scandal or lying. It's about staying strong. It's about a girl from the Smoky Mountains who learned early that sometimes you have to play a character in public to protect what really matters in private. Dolly Parton may have been singing coat of many colors, but her life was put together with way more layers than anyone ever thought. To understand Dolly's double life, we first need to understand just how far she came. Dolly Parton was born on January 19th, 1946 in Locust Ridge, Tennessee, a tiny town near Pittman Center in the Great Smoky Mountains. She was the fourth of 12 children born to Robert Lee Parton, a farmer and construction worker, and Avi Lee Parton, who kept the family together through music and faith. The story goes that the Partons had so little money when Dolly was born that her father paid the doctor with a bag of cornmeal. Dolly herself has told this story with a laugh over the years, never hiding where she came from. Being poor, in fact, would later inspire some of her most famous songs, like Coat of Many Colors, written about the patchwork coat her mother made from old rags. Life in that one room cabin was crowded, loud, and full of music. Avi Lee taught her children old mountain folk songs, and Dolly soaked up the church songs she heard on Sundays. By the time she was 10, she was already singing on local radio stations in Knoxville, and by age 13, she appeared at the Grand Ole Opry for the first time, introduced by the famous Johnny Cash. Even back then, Dolly knew where she was going. She once said, "I always knew I was meant for more than a cabin in the woods. I just didn't know how far I have to go to get there." She meant what she said. The very day after she finished high school in 1964, she packed her bags and moved to Nashville, ready to chase her dream. The early years weren't easy. Nashville was packed with people trying to make it, and Dolly's high mountain voice wasn't exactly what was popular at the time. But she never gave up. She signed with Monument Records, and they tried to make her sing pop first, but she quickly found her place in country music. Her big break came when Porter Wagoner, the star of The Porter Wagoner Show, asked her to join him on television in 1967. That partnership made Dolly famous. Together, they recorded duets, went on tour, and built a huge fan base. But behind the smiles and matching outfits, Dolly was already showing she had another side, one where she didn't want to be just someone's helper. In 1974, Dolly made the hard choice to leave Wagoner's show, to go solo. To make it easier, she wrote "I Will Always Love You," a goodbye song that would become one of the most famous songs ever. That one moment shows Dolly's double life perfectly. Sweet on the outside, but based on tough choices, big dreams, and a need to be her own person. The girl who started with nothing but a cornmeal payment was now well on her way to becoming a star. But being famous needed more than just a good voice. It needed a carefully planned image. And that's where Dolly's other life really started to take shape. If you ask Dolly Parton about her style, she'll tell you straight. It costs a lot of money to look this cheap. That joke, said with a smile, shows the smart thinking behind her look. In the 1970s, country music was still run by men in cowboy hats, and women were expected to be sweet and quiet. Dolly decided to change that. She piled her hair into super tall wigs, painted her lips bright red, and wore sparkly dresses that shone like a disco ball under stage lights. She once said that her look came from a woman back home, a woman people whispered about, but remembered for being bold. Dolly thought, if that's trashy, then trashy looks pretty fun. But here's the secret. Dolly's sparkly look wasn't just fashion. It was like armor. By creating Dolly Parton, the big hair, the fancy dresses, the over-the-top girly look, she gave audiences something so amazing to look at that they often forgot to dig deeper. Behind that armor, Dolly could keep her private life exactly that private. She took this so seriously that she's admitted to sleeping in her makeup. Why? Because if a fire or earthquake happened in the middle of the night, she wanted to be ready to meet the public without breaking the magic. Imagine caring that much about your image. It sounds tiring, but for Dolly, it was survival in a business quick to forget women the moment they looked too ordinary. Of course, Dolly used the attention to her advantage. When magazines wondered about plastic surgery, she made the joke. First, if something's sagging, bagging, or dragging, I'll tuck it, suck it, or pluck it, she once joked. By doing this, she turned weakness into jokes, staying in control of the story. But maybe the most interesting part is how she mixed openness with secrecy. Dolly could talk for hours about her wigs, her makeup, routine, or even her chest. But when it came to the more personal parts of her life, her marriage, her struggles, her faith, she closed the curtain. Fans thought they knew her, but the truth is, they only knew the version she wanted them to see. This balancing act wasn't lying. It was strategy. By building Dolly the show, she protected Dolly the real person. She made a space where she could survive being famous, stay in charge of her career, and still keep her deepest truths safe. And yet, as we'll see, Dolly's contradictions just kept growing. She was the sparkling queen of country, but she was also the woman who shocked fans by posing for Playboy. She was a serious Christian, writing church music while at the same time trying to be successful on the pop and rock charts. She was generous and giving, but also super smart about business, turning herself into a brand way before that became normal. The wig and the sparkles weren't just a look. They were the mask that let her live two lives, one for the world and one for herself. By the time the sparkles were blinding and the wigs were super tall, Dolly Parton had turned herself into a brand. But every brand has its secrets, and Dolly's were written in invisible ink. Let's start with the biggest mystery, her marriage. Dolly Parton married Carl Thomas Dean on May 30th, 1966. The wedding was tiny, just Dolly, Carl, her mother, the preacher, and the preacher's wife. Carl was her partner for almost 60 years. But for most fans, he's a ghost. He rarely shows up in public, never goes to red carpets, and the man has said no to interviews so consistently he could win an Olympic medal for it. This made people wonder, was he real? Were they secretly divorced? Was Dolly hiding some secret romance? She played along with the rumors with humor, once joking that people thought she had a mannequin in the closet she called Carl. In reality, Carl just hated the spotlight. While Dolly was building Dollywood, touring stadiums, and starring in 9 to 5, Carl was running a road paving business and living a quiet life in Nashville. That difference is so huge. Dolly sparkling in sequins, Carl in work boots at home. It was one of the clearest examples of her double life. And then there's Dolly's faith. She's never hidden her Christianity. Growing up in the Smokies, church music was in her blood. She's made multiple gospel albums and says she prays every day. But in 1978, Dolly shocked conservative fans when she posed for Playboy. She didn't pose naked. She wore the famous bunny suit, ears, and all but the idea of a gospel singing country girl showing up in Playboy was almost shocking. Dolly brushed it off, later laughing that she did it because she looked kind of cute back then and wanted to show off while she could. That contradiction, Bible in one hand, bunny, ears in the other, is pure Dolly. She never fit neatly into one box. And maybe that's the key. The double life wasn't about hiding bad things. It was about refusing to be locked into one category. Her music tells the same story. Remember that on one single night in 1973, she wrote two of her biggest songs, Jolene and I Will Always Love You. One is about jealousy and temptation. The other is about a sweet goodbye. To write such different emotions in one sitting shows how many emotional worlds Dolly was dealing with at once. Then there's her business empire. Fans see Dollywood as a theme park full of roller coasters and cinnamon bread. But behind the scenes, Dolly is a smart businesswoman. She owns multiple companies under the Dollywood name, has invested in media projects, and has built her brand with perfect planning. But she downplays this side of herself, often pretending to be just a country girl while making multi-million-dollar decisions. That's another form of her double life, the smart CEO hidden under the sparkly gowns. And let's not forget giving back. Dolly's Imagination Library, started in 1995, has mailed over 200 million free books to children around the world. She has paid for hospitals, scholarships, and famously gave $1 million toward COVID-19 vaccine research at Vanderbilt University. But she's always quick to make jokes about her generosity, saying she doesn't do it for praise. Dolly once said, "I just think it's important to give back if you've been blessed, and I've been more blessed than I ever deserved." Still, even her giving back has a double side. The public sees the generosity. Dolly sees a mission based on her childhood, poverty, and her faith, the side of her life she often keeps quieter. So by the 1980s and 90s, Dolly was living on two tracks, one super public, one very private, and both were working together perfectly. But here's the thing, keeping up two lives isn't easy, which makes you wonder, why did she hold on to that separation for so long? Living two lives may sound cool, but in reality, it's more like juggling fire. Dolly managed it for decades, and the reasons go deeper than wigs and clever comebacks. First, there's the huge pressure of fame. Imagine waking up every day knowing millions of people feel like they deserve to know your story, your secrets, your heartbreaks. Dolly understood early that fame can destroy you if you don't set boundaries. By creating a sparkling version of herself, she gave fans something to enjoy while keeping the tender parts of her heart locked away. It was self-protection in sequence. Second, let's talk about being a woman. Dolly started in country music in the 1960s when women were often expected to be sweet, obedient, and in the background. By exaggerating her femininity, the makeup, the wigs, the jokes about her body, she took control of the joke before anyone else could use it against her. When critics said she was too flashy, she laughed louder. When they made fun of her chest, she turned into a punchline. That's power. And that look let her climb ladders that might have been pulled away otherwise. Third, there's control. Dolly wasn't just a singer. She was a songwriter and businesswoman. She owns her publishing rights, a move that made her millions. When Whitney Houston's version of I Will Always Love You became one of the best-selling singles ever, she knew that to stay in control of her music and her money, she had to play the long game. The public Dolly distracted the world, while the private Dolly signed contracts, built empires, and played chess while everyone else thought she was playing checkers. But make no mistake, the double life had risks. Keeping secrets meant creating rumors. For decades, magazines guessed about everything from her sexuality to her marriage to supposed affairs with co-stars. Dolly brushed these off with humor, saying, "People are always talking. If they're talking about me, at least they're leaving someone else alone." Still, the mental weight of always avoiding questions, always editing your answers must have been heavy. There were moments when the strain showed. In interviews from the 80s, you can see Dolly pause before answering questions about Carl Dean or about being lonely on the road. In her 1994 autobiography, Dolly, My Life, and Other Unfinished Business, she admitted to times of depression and self-doubt. She even confessed to a time in the 1980s when she thought about suicide, a harsh reminder that beneath the wigs was a real human being trying to cope. So, why keep the double life if it was so exhausting? Because the alternative, giving it all away, was worse. Dolly once said, "I'm not going to limit myself just because people won't accept the fact that I can do something else." By separating her private self from her public self, she gave herself room to grow, to try new things, to survive. And, in a way, it worked brilliantly. Think of it like this. When fans saw Dolly in a sparkly jumpsuit cracking jokes about her chest, they were entertained. When Dolly went home, took off the wig, and sat with Carl Dean on their porch, she was safe. Both lives mattered, but they didn't have to overlap. Still, holding that balance for 30 years was walking a tightrope. And like all tightrope acts, there were moments when the rope shook, when Dolly's private self peeked out from behind the curtain and reminded the world she was more than sequins and sass. By keeping Carl out of the spotlight, Dolly made sure that she had a piece of her life untouched by fame. It was a double act. Dolly Parton, the global superstar, and Dolly Parton, the private wife who made dinner at home. That duality is what kept her sane in a business that swallows people whole. Few fans knew about her battle with depression in the 1980s, a time she later wrote about in her memoir, My Life, and Other Unfinished Business. She hid it with her trademark humor and energy. But behind the glitter, she was quietly facing health problems, heartbreak, and emotional stress. Only years later did she open up about those times, proving once again that the Dolly we saw on stage was only half the story. In other words, Dolly's sparkling mask wasn't lying. It was strategy. It was her way of giving us exactly what we wanted, while keeping for herself what she truly needed. On one hand, you had the image of Southern hospitality, kind, generous, family-oriented. On the other, she's edgy, daring, and completely unafraid of shocking the world. Who else could donate millions to children's reading and medical research while also posing for Playboy? That's Dolly. She wore the iconic bunny outfit in 1978, then wore it again at age 75 for her husband's birthday and told fans, "I did it because I still had the chest and the waistline." Classic Dolly. And then there's her giving back. Dolly doesn't just give back. She changes what giving back looks like. Her imagination library, which started as a small program in Tennessee, has now mailed more than 200 million free books to children worldwide. She also quietly gave $1 million to help fund Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine research in 2020, a gesture that led people to jokingly say, "Forget superheroes. Dolly Parton is the reason we can go outside again." But here's where her contradictions get even more delicious. While she's built an empire on country music, Dolly has never been afraid to try other genres. In the 1980s, she crossed over into pop with hits like 9 to 5 and Here You Come Again. And in 2023, at 77 years old, she went full rock star with her album. Rockstar. We're talking duets with Paul McCartney, Elton John, Stevie Nicks, and more. Fans were stunned, critics were impressed, and Dolly just smiled. She admitted she only made the record because she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and felt she had to earn it. That's Dolly's style. When challenged, she doesn't just show up. She shows up bigger, bolder, and sparklier than anyone else. And yet, beneath all the contradictions, there's one thing that stays the same. Dolly does what Dolly wants. She's not limited by categories or expectations. She can be wholesome and sexy, humble and flashy, private and larger than life, all at the same time. That's the paradox that makes her timeless. Dolly Parton's story is the ultimate American fairy tale. She was born in a one-room cabin in the Smoky Mountains, paid for with a bag of cornmeal. She grew up without electricity, without plumbing, often without shoes. But she turned those humble beginnings into the foundation of one of the most amazing careers in music history. Her so-called double life wasn't about scandal. It was about survival. Dolly built a dazzling public look that allowed her to shine on stage while keeping her real self safe behind the curtain. For 30 years, she lived that double life perfectly, fooling no one, but at the same time fooling everyone. And maybe that's the real lesson. Dolly Parton teaches us that you don't have to be just one thing. You can be glitter and grit, faith and freedom, fantasy and reality. You can be Dolly Parton, the icon, and Dolly Parton, a woman, and you can let both lives grow without compromise. So when we say Dolly lived a double life for 30 years, what we really mean is this. Dolly lived life on her own terms, and in doing so, she didn't just become a superstar. She became folklore, a living legend whose story will be told long after the last sparkle fades. Thanks for watching till the end. By the way, which Dolly Parton double life moment surprised you most? Let us know in the comments. And while you're down there, tap like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you're always in the front row for our next content.